What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Nolecast. That's Chuck Blunt. We are here to do the Alabama at Florida State preview, 3:30 on ESPN in Tallahassee. Game line, Chuck currently sitting at just under two touchdowns, maybe two touchdowns in some places there, and over under of 50.5. Where do you want to start with this thing, buddy? I think we should start with an ad read, though, because we want to thank our friends, of course, at the legendary team. Chad does an awesome job closing on 600 loans for Nolecast listeners. Can 600 folks be wrong? I guess possibly, but probably not that wrong. Certainly not 2 and 10 wrong as we look to turn the page and get this season kicked off. 844 FSU loan. 844 FSU loan is that number that you need to be calling for sure. I have a lot of thoughts in this matchup. I know you do too. Graham had a very busy day today, by the way. If you saw the news that Battles In is more formally partnering with the university on more of the Olympic sports and the stuff outside of what they were already doing with football. So, congrats to him, and we'll watch as that goes forward, of course. Man, do we start with the weather? Where do you want to start with this? There's so much.
Well, we got the depth chart. I mean, there was a lot of hand-wringing on social media. I think, do we want to address what we think of I don't think there was a lot of surprises. It almost makes me feel like maybe some people weren't totally plugged in all summer. It feels like it was kind of what we expected. I think it's some of the backups maybe have some concern for some people, but I think we've reiterated a lot of times that this team needs to stay healthy because after the frontline guys, there's a lot of drop off at certain positions. And I think that's what kind of shocked some people probably.
I saw that Sonone wrote an article, Welcome to the Meritocracy, which talk about earning your spots and reversing the trend from last year where some guys probably kept being run out there where maybe their practice habits were suboptimal. And certainly their hustle habits in actual games were quite disappointing. So I get that, but also like, man, it's Florida State. Your job is to certainly your job at some base level is to play the best player, but your real job is to get a super talented player, to get him to play hard, to get him to buy in and develop him, right. Which this staff has failed to do a lot with that 2024 class and 2023 class to some extent. But yeah, Chuck, we do see this on Nolecast. We see it pretty much in all facets of college football media. There's a lot of people who check out in the offseason. They just do. Like we appreciate our diehards. We love our diehards, but there's a reason I've never taken this show daily. Right. I just don't really think there's enough Florida State to talk about to handle a daily FSU only show, especially if you don't like basketball that much, right? Like how do you carry the offseason, right? And it's easy to do when you're soft 13-0. All credit to a guy like Jeff Cameron who can do this every single day, 5 days a week. Yeah, I think a lot of people check out and they check back in. Were there any actual surprises on the depth chart for you?
I think it was interesting that Jaden Jones seems to be firmly in the rotation. We heard he was having a nice fall camp, but I think we kind of expected maybe maybe a portal guy to step up, like a McCray or something. He is going to be a second team DM, but it seems like Jaden Jones has firmly put himself as like that number 3 defensive end. So that was a little surprising for me, but I think he could be a great story as well. Like he dealt with that knee injury coming out of JUCO, and he's put in a lot of work to get back to get an opportunity. So hopefully he makes the most of it.
I think that's fair. All right, let's dealer's choice. Weather. Actually, should we talk weather first so when we reference it, people know what we're talking about?
Yes.
All right. So which site has a good weather this year? I use my own little model thing. All right, by the way, we might get some rain in Boise, USF tomorrow night, which I think is a really fun game.
That'll be fun.
Really fun game. USF has a couple kids that I think are potentially big time for next year's portal. All right, so let's take a look here. 3:30 Florida State weather. The official weather forecast as of now is 77% chance of rain. It's highlighted as poor weather. So
you'd have to think that favors FSU though, right? A slower track, unsure footing. typically weather levels the playing field some, and given that Bama's probably the bigger, faster team overall, and we know that the 247 composite team talent came out this week. We know they're still one of the top 2 teams in the country in terms of talent. I think that having some weather and the way Gus wants to run this offense would definitely be beneficial to at least making the game a little more unpredictable.
I would agree with that. In looking at this, don't you want the variance if you're the dog?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when you want to run the football. It'd be different if they were going to try to throw this thing around 35 or 40 times, but they're not. They want to run it 40 times, and I think that plays right into their hands. Now, of course, you have to hold on to the football. That's going to be key. Ball protection in the weather is a major concern, so you got to make sure you don't fumble. Just hold on to the football. Don't do stupid things trying to get extra yardage. Get down when you have to and live to play another down.
I don't like that we have to do this how can Florida State pull the upset type show as often as we've had to do in recent years. But I do think the format is sort of a fun one at times, to be able to kind of lay out, hey, if they pull the upset, and that's a pretty good upset, 14-point dog.
Mm-hmm.
Although we'll note there's a chance that like the rain takes the crowd out of the game.
Yes.
Like that's the one negative. You do want the variance. I think you want the craziness potentially because you need it on your side.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really want the crowd taken out of the game.
Yeah, you'd almost wish it was on the road if you were going to have this weather, because then you'd like to have Bryant Denny quiet, right?
1,000,000%. Let's talk some of this Alabama offense. I think that's probably where we should start. I will go ahead and share screen here with a really cool chart that you made up. I think this is pretty interesting. So I asked Chuck, I was like, hey, what do we have as far as the ability to pull this in? And here we go here. So I'll kind of slide this around some just so we can see what we're looking at. But let's compare Alabama's profile last year to Alabama's profile when they were at Washington, when they played for the national championship, losing to Michigan. Now, personnel-wise, that Washington team had 3 drafted receivers, a pretty good back, 3 drafted offensive linemen, another kid who was like very clearly extremely good at college football, just probably wasn't pro-worthy, a first-round, like top half of the first-round quarterback in Michael Penix. And I don't really recall what happened to the tight end. So maybe he sucked. I don't know. Kalen DeBoer's won pretty much wherever he has been. But we want to talk about the Washington aspect here because it's probably the most recent and best example of what his offense looked like when they're throwing the football well. And also because that was the last year that he had coordinator Ryan Grubb. And Grubb left for the Seahawks. That did not go super well. He got fired or he just quit?
I think he just quit. Yeah, I would have to double check that, but I don't believe he was terminated. I think it was he decided to part ways on his terms.
Gotcha. All right. So let me see if I can pull some of these assets off here. All right. So we can actually see this better if you're watching us on YouTube. You really should. YouTube.com/Nolecast.
I do want to call out for those watching and listening. This is not opponent adjusted. These are just raw numbers. So you would expect some of this to dip because you're going from Pac-12 opponents to SEC opponents. So it is important to take that into account when you are looking at some of these numbers. Across the board, though, the offense wasn't as bad as some people made it out to be. I think there were a couple key things. Jalen Milroe turned the ball over too much. And the offensive line was not even remotely close to being average. So it's one thing FSU fans can totally feel the pain of Alabama fans. That offensive line gave up, what was it? Front 7 havoc on 11.4% of the plays. For those who don't know, front 7 havoc is tackles for a loss, forced fumbles. So it's generating negative plays and large negative plays, more importantly. And that offensive line really struggled with that. Now, some of that might be Jalen Milroe, but it is something to keep in mind. And they don't have the same offensive line coach that they had at Washington. He is still in Seattle. So it is important to note that while the offensive line coach they have might be well regarded amongst his peers, they don't have that same continuity, even though Grubb is coming back. So it'll be something interesting to watch. Is Grubb able to patchwork some of the problems they had, especially because it does look like they're going to be down an offensive lineman in this game who's dealing with concussions.
Yeah, Jaden Roberts, who was actually on the freaks list for Bruce Feldman. Bama had 3 offensive linemen on the freaks list, which is ridiculous. But yeah, so this kind of brings us to one of our first ifs or unknowns. If we're sketching out how can Florida State win this game, and I don't think either of us think that they are super likely to win the ball game, obviously, but it's not like a foregone conclusion that they have no chance to win. Things can and do happen in this sport that we love. Chuck, I think one of the first ones is, what if this O-line continues to be a group of talented guys who maybe don't play all that well together?
I think it gives FSU a really good shot. I mean, now you need we've voiced some of our concerns about, is there enough pass rush on this front for FSU? Ooh. That will be a big determining factor. But also, I don't think Bama's going to come in trying to sling the ball around. So it's more going to be a question, is this defensive line able to take away some of that run game? Because I think they're going to try to protect Ty Simpson early in the game, particularly, and let him throw off play action. So can FSU nullify some of that run game? And keep in mind, Jam Miller's probably not going to play. So now Bama's down to their second and third string tailbacks. Can you take them away a little and put more game pressure on Ty Simpson in that second quarter and early in the third quarter and see how they play? We know they went 2-3 on the road last year, plus lost a neutral site game in the bowl game. They did not play very well away from Tuscaloosa. So can you get them psychologically doubting themselves early in the game by taking away that run game and making Ty Simpson prove he is the right man for this job? Or do they have to maybe bring in, Keelan Russell or Austin Mack?
Totally. I agree with you on that. And Russell, of course, is the 5-star freshman who was just unreal for Duncanville last year in his final year of high school. Yeah. You look at some of these games that Tony White coached at Nebraska, and obviously I think he and Rule had their disagreements down the stretch. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here. But like some of these games, yeah, and Nebraska had good personnel up front last year. I think Nebraska's personnel up front last year is better than what FSU has this year, to be honest.
It was definitely better suited for what Tony wants to do, I think.
Yes, right. Yeah. More curated. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to repeat what you said. Totally agree. He did create some really good confusions in a few of these games. If you go back and look at the Colorado game, now granted, I mean, Colorado's O-line was kind of a mess, and I don't think Bama's O-line was anywhere close to being a mess as much as Colorado's was last year. But you did still see some free runners created by Tony, and I don't think you have much of a chance to beat Bama's O-lineman one-on-one. I just don't. I think they're bigger, faster, stronger than you are. I think a lot of your D-line is going to go pro in something other than sports. It's a position that FSU has recruited spectacularly poorly by FSU standards under Mike Norvell. Like, if you think about it, how many of these guys who are starting for FSU's D-line would even be on scholarship at Bama? 3?
At most.
Daryl? Probably James.
Would Daryl?
Yeah, I think Daryl will be on scholarship. There's
just
no way
for the physical attributes, not so much the tape. Yeah.
Oh, he hasn't played worth a damn yet. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's not true. He hasn't played like a high level player consistently ever.
Right.
But it's possible. And then I think Bama would take Kevin Wynn.
Yes. I mean, Texas desperately wanted him, so I definitely think Bama would love that. Especially if Tim Keenan can't play, they would love to have another big body in the middle.
Man, absolutely. I just think like there's a pretty good chance the second stringers Bama blocks in practice are physically better than a lot of the guys you're going to be rolling out there as starters.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean they are better players. I just mean physically, like height, weight, speed, that type of thing. Yeah, it's a different looking body type at that program than what you currently have in Tallahassee, unfortunately, which is why Mike Norvell might get fired, because it's his job. Like, you take the Florida State job because you have an ability to get elite recruits, and hasn't done that.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee they don't show a lot of confusion.
Right.
There's no guarantee that they don't allow free runners. There's no guarantee that, they're like, now Braswell's a really good center. Like, really good.
Another freak list guy on Coleman's list.
I talked to Cole Kubik a lot. He obviously played center at Auburn. Knows this, like, he's kind of a nerd about the center position. He speaks extremely highly of that kid and thinks he's maybe the best in the SEC this year. even among like a very kind of loaded SEC center crop this year, which is kind of a wild thing to say. We probably need to go outside and touch some grass. But man, like there's no guarantee that Ty Simpson won't have confusion in terms of the protection, especially if the crowd's good and Tony wants to bring a lot of different pressures. I think that's probably the second if. Like, we think that Ty Simpson is probably good because Bama did not aggressively pursue anybody, at least not to our knowledge, in the portal. So they thought he was their guy. He thought he needed to sit. Does it, like, if you think about this, does it say something that they never put him in over Milroe last year? Or do you think they just were kind of like riding with Milroe and because the team liked Milroe a lot, clearly?
I think the bigger thing this whole quarterback competition in Tuscaloosa tells me is they had handpicked Austin Mack as their guy, and he came with them from Washington. And the fact that he still didn't win the job in a second year at Alabama and the third year in DeBoer's system, that tells me, I mean, it really seems like Simpson won the job because he protected the ball. We heard that a lot during their fall camp. He protected the ball. Not turning it over isn't always the best sign because that might mean you're not taking shots when they're there because you're too concerned and you play a little too conservative. So I'm curious to see that aspect early in the game. Is he willing to take a shot down the field, especially when FSU exposes themselves by bringing extra pressure? You have Ryan Williams on the outside. If he's scared to pull that trigger, that could be a huge benefit for FSU. So I really want to see that early in the game. How apt is he to take those shots down the field and try to make the big play, or does he just continue to check it down or throw the ball away?
I do think this could, in theory, play into your hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a Tony White defense that knows it doesn't have a lot of like pass rush without manufactured pass rush. They're going to like the zone blitz a whole lot. They don't play a whole lot of man. The one thing that well, there's a lot of challenges here. The first challenge is that they might just move you off your spot in the run game. They're just bigger, stronger, faster than you are, and there's not a whole lot you can do. I do think there's some things you can try, obviously, like various run blitzes, try to stem, try to move a little bit. Show various fronts. It's a new defense. Bama will probably have a bit of a feeling out period early on in the game. But also, DeBoer at Washington was tremendous at creating these easy access throws that also seemed to pair quite nicely with run after the catch. That was you look at their success rate, 50.8, and then their explosive rate was freaking nuts. They're really good off play action. If you look at that right column there, Chuck, offensive standard down success rates, that's when you get a lot of your play action stuff. Fourth in the country. Like that's
tremendous.
PPA there of sixth in the nation. That does not suck at all.
Now, one of the benefits Kalen did have, though, is Michael Penix was a super duper senior, and he had been it was his second year running the offense. Because remember, he was a starter in 2022. So Simpson will not have that advantage. So I do think that helps FSU some, that Simpson's still trying to learn this offense, whereas Penix had it pretty much mastered in 2023, and he knew how to throw his guys open against those zone coverages to allow them to run after the catch, like you mentioned.
Totally. I think you have to try to confuse him. You got to try to confuse him. Good analysis, but yep, that is what all defenses try to do. FSU's did not do very well in the past few years of confusing the opponent. They just, if they could whip you, cool. If they didn't, not a lot of confusion. But, right, like if you can make Simpson not recognize some of these early access throws, I think that's a major break for you. But that is easier said than done. And to your point, we don't know that he's actually going to throw those guys open and come on a consistent schedule. So, like, to me, that's a real key. Some other personnel stuff here. Richard Young is likely going to get the majority of carries for Alabama, according to their depth chart. He's a Lehigh High School kid. I've always thought he's more of a boom or bust runner, which could play into your hands, but also could not play into your hands, right? Like, if we think Tony's defense is probably apt to give up explosive plays in a trade-off for trying to create those negatives, Richard Young is a guy that you take it to the house and make you pay, for sure. Yes. I said on Cover 3 today, if you're betting this, I would look for some like longest rush props. Those have kind of gone the way of the dinosaurs in recent years. Not a lot of books offer those anymore, unfortunately, because they were fun.
And I'll just call out, you can also see that last year Bama did struggle on that success rate on rushing plays, right? They were 52nd in the country. That's not what you would expect from an Alabama team, especially with the freaks they have on that offensive line. So that kind of speaks to that front seven havoc that they allowed. They struggled. They got themselves off schedule early in drives because they did struggle to consistently run the football when they had opportunities. So that's what you got to hope, that FSU can continue to have that type of success against the Alabama offensive line, whether that's simulating pressure or actually bringing multiple guys from different angles.
So looking at receiver here, Ryan Williams obviously is just an absolute freak show. Probably the second or third best receiver in the country after Jeremiah Smith. Like single-handedly beat Georgia last year. Like that was incredible. He's not the biggest guy. Kind of skinny. He's not crazy short, but he's certainly not the biggest dude. He plays a little bit above the rim, though. I will say, relative to his size. Jeremy Bernard does not really. He's their number 2 on the outside, and because they do not have a real receiving threat at tight end, but both their tight ends I think are more blockers, at least at this point. One guy I would circle in this game is Isaiah Horton.
Yes,
Horton's a guy that somebody close to the Miami program told me I wish we would have kept Horton. So he was at Miami, bigger body guy, like 6'4", was kind of raw with the Canes. You've seen some good reports about him coming out of Alabama. I don't know how much he's going to play, but if you go down their depth chart, in terms of guys who appear to have a likelihood to make an impact on this game with some size, I think it kind of has to be Horton as maybe your red zone guy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Offensive line.
Do we anticipate them putting Jerry Wilson straight on Ryan Williams, or is it going to be like a left-right always, or a boundary field type of situation? How do we expect the corners to line up, specifically because Ryan Williams is such a threat?
I would not travel a corner on Ryan Williams. I don't think. I mean, do you think Jerry Wilson is like that level of kid? Because I
think he's the best option FSU has, and I do have concerns about the other options that could be on him and whether or not Bama tries to exploit that repeatedly and force Tony to make a decision one way or the other. I'm going to try to cover him with my best guy. They went out and got a guy who understands Tony's system. So I wonder if they're going to make him the number one, at least in this game. Please try to take away Ryan Williams so that somebody else has to beat us when they throw the football.
So we went over this last year because, who was it Tony Hill? The kid's from Orlando. I actually know the kid. The dude that Nebraska had that we thought could probably check Travis Hunter, at least to the extent you can check Travis Hunter. He was a Arizona State signee originally and then transferred to Nebraska. Tommy Hill,
that's it. I was pulling up the roster.
If I recall, Nebraska actually did not travel the corner. I think they played it more
left, right,
field boundary, left, right. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think that they kept him on him. And for those of you at home, that's something you'll see more in defenses that play a lot of man coverage. For defenses that play a whole lot of zone, they don't typically travel the corners as much. But it is possible he could. I don't know what Tony's going to do. I think Tony's a really good football coach, but I don't know what he's going to do with that. A quick check-in on some props here for this ball game. Let me see here. All right. So passing yards, Ty Simpson basically 250 is his over-under.
I would take under.
I think
if Bama's going to win, it's not going to be because he throws them to victory. I mean, they're probably going to run it down FSU's throat and try to wear them out in the game. So I'd be shocked if he throws for that much. FSU's got to have a shot, you would think.
I mean, 252. Yeah, and unless he's like 250 and Bama's like 220 rushing, that's So let me look here. Also, passing touchdowns for them. Ty Simpson over 1.5 is minus 157. So that's I tend to agree with you. I think it's more of a rushing thing just to take the crowd out of it. I don't think Bama's going to go insane.
Plus, if the weather is like as expected, that's not the recipe to throw the football in.
Yeah, so like a wet track is a good recipe to throw the football. Although I do tend to like teams better who play zone on wet than man. And this is not some big betting edge, but there is something there. And the reason typically is because like you're reacting, you're facing the ball. Like the teams that play a lot of man on some of those juke routes, it's like, okay, this is like the receiver knows where he's going, the defender does not.
Right. All it takes is one little slip, and he creates massive separation. And it's over.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. Let me see. Receiving yards here for Alabama. Jeremy Bernard, interestingly, is 59 and a half. Ryan Williams, 71 and a half. Richard Young, 69 and a half rushing yards. Ty Simpson rushing yards, interestingly. I will note this kid can move a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not a huge run threat. But if I told you that his rushing yards was within 9 of Tommy Castellano's rushing yards, 29 and a half to 35 and a half, would you be surprised?
No, because you have to factor in that Tommy's probably going to take a handful, maybe not 5 sacks, but he's probably going to take 2 or 3, and those could wipe out any large gains he gets.
He also takes some like the size of the sacks Castellano tends to take are huge. Like
yes,
he's taking like 11-yard sacks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We broke this down a lot on Cover 3 last year. If you go through DeBoer's history, absent Penix, he actually has been a guy where the quarterback was the leading rusher of the team or rushed for at least 800 yards, I think like 9 times.
Wow.
So he is not a guy that like came up as just let's chuck the ball all over the yard. He does seem to run the quarterback a good bit. I don't know how much you want to run Ty Simpson an opener when your backup's true freshman, but if you turn your back a whole lot to him, I could see him taking off. But I do actually like that Ty Simpson under a whole lot, by the way, because Florida State plays that much zone. Right. You know? All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little about Congruity. Our friends at Congruity are an awesome partner for us. Like 9 Nolecast businesses, obviously all the business that Graham has sent them as well. Congruity, HR, payroll solutions, but really whatever you need, they are there for you to optimize your business. Take your business to the next level with Congruity. Make sure that you told them the Nolecast sent them, and we have some exciting new partnerships over there as well that I know we'll be talking about in the coming episodes. Also want to take our time to thank Madison Social, Township, the whole For the Table restaurant group. You know, texting with Matt Thompson all day today. I know he's super excited about having Alabama come in, and he would like there not to be terrible weather for this game, as well as what I have to do some stand-up TV hits for CBS on Friday. So I would like if that is not in the rain, but I'll certainly be around all day on Saturday if you guys want to come say hello to us. Got to watch all the ball games. Madso is a great place to do that, so we can do Cover 3 11:30 on the recap, and of course the Nolecast instant reaction on Saturday as well. All right, anything else for the offense? Bama's not going to go tempo, I wouldn't think, especially if Gus is going tempo. Like, there's no reason for them to play like a psycho tempo game.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. What else do we have here on the Bama offense? Running back 2, Daniel Hill or Draylon Washington. I don't think those guys are necessarily amazing. Draylon Washington came from Louisiana Lafayette. I think we're kind of talked out on this Bama offense, man. What else like? Okay, so things we think could go wrong that could help you, like other than you just go and take control of the game. Offensive line communication issues like is not equal to the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm.
Simpson plays like a first-year starter.
Right.
Whether lack of size at receiver, if Horton is maybe not what people think he could be, maybe not having Jam Miller, the tailback, right? Like maybe Richard Young doesn't see some holes that the offense has opened up for him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, sometimes when you have running back by committee, you don't have a running back, right? Like, and that's what it seems like they're kind of having to do here without Jam. Without their number one option, it's up in the air who's going to be able. You would expect Richard Young to be the one who gets the bulk of the carries, but if he's not successful, then they're kind of searching in the running game at that point.
Bama has they're big up front offensive line. Florida State is pretty damn big at linebacker.
Mhm.
So, I mean, especially by college standards, those guys better come ready to bang for sure, because I don't know how well your D line is going to hold up as far as keeping blockers and keeping backers clean. Like, you're going to have backers really fight through some blocks.
This is a game we would probably anticipate them to actually use 3 backers on the field, at least in the early downs, right? This is
I would
where
think so.
it won't be a 4-2-5. It'll actually probably be the 3-3-5 more often than not in those first and second downs, depending on if they're run situations.
I think so. I mean, like, a lot of times against the 11 personnel, one tight end, one back, teams want to get into that 4-down look, but it may be just more advantageous for you to not do so. Like, you may want to play your 3-3. We'll see how Tony wants to play it here. Chuck, let's talk a little Bama defense.
All right.
And Florida State offense. I think this is a real interesting matchup here, clearly. What stands out to you about Bama when we watch them, and maybe this matchup specifically?
Well, I think one of the things that jumped off to me was just how little havoc they actually created last year. That's something you expect out of a Bama defense. At least we always saw it from Nick Saban, and particularly when Kirby was the defensive coordinator there. But they were 67th last year in the country in front seven havoc created. So, and we know that they're probably going to be without their nose tackle, Tim Keenan, who we just found out had the tightrope surgery on his ankle. So
he's not going to play via tightrope.
Yeah. So not having their number one nose tackle, and they already struggled last year. They've kind of underperformed given their recruiting rankings up front the last few years. So I think that's an opportunity for FSU to try to take advantage, run it right at them, and see if those guys are prepared to stop it. Now, they were across the board, they were a great defense last year. I mean, it wasn't the Bama standard, but it was still better than 90% of the country. But I think that's the one area they don't seem to get in the backfield and create as many tackles for a loss as you would expect from a Bama defense. So that's a positive, given Gus's offensive line tends to give up a lot of havoc. And it can be a little boomer bust there sometimes. So I think that could play into FSU's advantage if they can get that running game going early, particularly with Keenan out.
So, like to your point, I mean, we're not trying to disparage Herb Hand, but we know based on who else they talked to that Hand was far from their first choice, and they could have had him immediately if Gus had really wanted it, right? Like that's obvious. I agree with you. Bama's D line has not been great. They are very high on LT Overton. Keenan was sort of that, like, super senior, super steady presence. They were super happy to have him back. He's very good at what he does as far as like being a fire hydrant, just like hard to move guy, absorbing blocks. I will tell you, just from reading some of the reports people I talked to, they're very high on James Smith as a guy who could be like the next like freaky dude. I don't know if he's like a Marcel Darius level kid, but they are pretty high on him. Where I think they're elite is linebacker.
Yes.
I mean, Deontay Lawson is really damn good. Quay Rusa, Jamarian Latham is a pretty nice guy. Justin Jefferson, like they go and they get Nakai Hill Green back from Colorado is like, that's a hell of a depth piece to get. And probably one of the better people on Colorado's team this year had he decided to stay. I'm not really sure how. I'm not saying Castellanos can't get loose. I am a little curious how often he can get loose against Alabama's defense with their ability to run at the linebacker position.
It's probably going to have to be an improvisation run more than a designed QB run, right? I think if they try to run too many QB designed runs for Tommy, that's where the linebackers for Alabama should have probably a field day against that. But I think if it's more Tommy reads the first, reads the second, and neither one's there and takes off, he might have a few opportunities.
I agree with that. I will also note, and this is interesting, but last year, Oklahoma and Vanderbilt ran it on Bama extremely well with the quarterback.
Yes.
Now, that's a different thing because they were running a lot of veer that Vandy was. And Oklahoma actually broke out some veer, I think, after watching that Vandy game. I wouldn't anticipate FSU doing that. But Bama did struggle with QB run last year and with assignment sound football. And they did not create a lot of havoc. They were a good defense overall, clearly. But Kane Womack's defense is a little bit different style. I was surprised they struggled with mobile quarterbacks last year because it's much like Tony's defense is much more zone than Adam Fuller's was. So is Kane Womack's. Like Kane Womack's defense is much more zone than Nick Saban's was. So I would anticipate more eyes on Tommy Castellanos.
And I think the Vanderbilt game's a good example for FSU that you can't give up on the run game too early. Vandy didn't exactly run it for a high yards per carry. It was just a little over 3 yards per carry, but they had 54 carries. They stayed with it. They ran Diego Pavia, and even when they didn't have success, they didn't abandon the run game. The last thing FSU can afford to do is fall into a game where they're going to ask Tommy to throw it 30 plus times a game. They're just not going to win that game more than 5-10% of the time. They have to stick with the run game even when it's not working particularly early, because you need to hopefully find some success in that second half if the game's close.
I agree with that. We've shared the stats on the show before. Castellanos is not a good passer of the football. When Gus offenses have to throw the ball a lot, their passing concepts are not exactly anything special. Right. Let's just be real about it. Like they win on tempo. They win with run game, with some trickeration, with giving their offensive linemen some friendly angles, which I think you will absolutely need in this game, most likely. And I think they're well equipped to do that and maybe spring some big runs. Chroma could be huge here for you. To that point, let's take a look at some of these props on FSU and in the offensive side. So Tommy Castellanos, 169.5 passing yards. It's very tied to the game state, clearly. Like if you think you have a shot in this, then you're probably under.
Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers because we also discussed his rushing numbers, and I feel like if you believe Bama's going to win and come close to covering, you'd probably go under his rushing total and probably over his passing total, because FSU is probably going to fall in a hole and have to try to throw themselves out of it. If FSU is going to win this game or at least keep it competitive and in doubt in the fourth quarter, his rushing numbers are going to go over, and he's probably not going to throw for 180 or 200 yards. It's going to keep that number lower because they're going to grind the clock. They're going to try to run it 40 plus times and mix him along with whatever running backs gets hot in the game would be the ideal situation.
I agree with that. Rushing yards, this is interesting to me. So Roydell Williams, 39 is feels high to me.
Yeah. I mean, I know he's listed as it's him or Sawchuk or an or on the depth chart, but you got to figure it's probably going to be more Chroma and Sawchuk. So I was a little surprised to see Roydell's number so high.
I would agree with that. Looking at receiving here, so Squirrel White, basically 33.5. I would go under that. I think you have some mean median deviation here. Like Squirrel White's not, and by that I mean if you were to play this game 1,000 times, the mean, so like the average number of receiving yards Squirrel gets is probably around there, but the median I think would be far lower. And so what this is essentially saying is, does Squirrel get a big catch?
Right. Does he hit one of those 40 or 50 yarders?
Correct, because I don't think that they're throwing the ball to him. Like he's not. I doubt he would have like 8 targets in this game. Although he certainly could pick up some garbage time stuff if this game were to get to garbage time or pseudo garbage time. You have to factor that in to your handicap. I will note, Bama secondary is nasty.
Yes,
those guys were young last year. They matured along the way pretty well. But like Damani Jackson, Bray Hubbard, Deshaun Jones, Saban Brown,
and Keon Sabb's awesome at safety.
Yeah. Well, shoot, I didn't say I still had him marked as injured, but yes, he's back now. Excuse me. Dejon Lee, who's a really, really nice true freshman, I think will play. Kind of him and Pickett are two of those true freshman corners in the SEC this year that we see, as well as the kid, is it Aguero at Georgia? Sorry, I'm blanking on the numbers here. But man, like I have a hard time seeing FSU throw the ball all over Bama. Unless play action is successful, which it easily could be, right? That play, like who does play action better in this game is probably going to decide either the winner or the margin of the game.
Ryan Williams or Deuce Robinson wins more 50-50 balls, right? Because both of them can go up there and challenge a corner.
Until Deuce shows me he can play big, I'm taking Ryan Williams.
That's fair. But I mean, I think that's part of the recipe for FSU. You need Deuce to hit a couple of those big 50-50 balls to flip fields, like flip the field and give FSU that huge explosive play.
Yeah, I agree with that. What else do we need to be thinking about here? I haven't seen any Boggs receiving numbers yet, which is kind of interesting. I think I can see Boggs catching a lot of balls if this gets to garbage time.
Mm-hmm.
Like underneath stuff, he's working. They're not giving out the ball over the top. They want to make you work your way back.
Boggs and Pittman are probably the two that might have the biggest games just in general, because the Bama secondary is probably going to take away Deuce and Squirrel.
Yeah, so there's weird stuff this time of year in the prop market. I'm not trying to make this into a betting show, I swear, but like, who in your mind is more likely to score a touchdown, Boggs or LaWayne McCoy?
Boggs.
Yeah, because Boggs is 5-1 and LaWayne McCoy is 3.5-1.
Is it just because Boggs is the freshman and the mainstream haven't caught on?
I think so.
The camp that he's had.
Yeah. Like, he's been good. They also don't have anybody else they really trust at slot. So,
and Boggs has been good from day one. Like, he's the one they talked about from the very beginning all the way to the very end.
He came in ready.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy at FSU about it, and he's like, I heard the shows. Like, I don't disagree as far as his like top end athleticism, but also I don't give a shit. Sorry for cutting, but like, he's like, we're playing college football.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. Yeah. All right. So let me think here. Special teams wise, we don't talk a lot of special teams. I think FSU might have the advantage of special teams, at least in the kicking game. In the return game, Ryan Williams, pretty nice punt returner.
Yeah. I do think that special teams could be the path to the victory, though. If FSU is going to spring this upset, I feel like they're going to need to block a punt for a short field, or get a massive punt return that leads to an easy score, or goes for a score, right? You need a game-changing special teams play as for the recipe of an upset. I
agree with that. It also could, because of the difference in athleticism up and down the roster, it's also where that could show.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think that you need to be saving guys for the future in this game. Like, you have two essentially bye weeks. Like, FSU's 2s and 3s, maybe 3s, definitely the 2s, could roll out and comfortably win over Kent State.
Yes.
All right.
And East Texas A&M.
You could sit every starter and you would be double-digit favorite over Kent State.
Yes. They're the worst team in FBS.
Yeah, it's really it's how many FCS teams do you do FCS power ratings?
I don't, but I was looking at the 767 or whatever by Conley, and I think he had 35 FCS teams ranked ahead of Kent State, or it may have been more.
Yeah,
like they're way down the list.
Like, would Kent State be an FCS playoff team?
No, not even close.
Right, I don't think so. Yeah, so it's wild. So my point is, play some starters on special teams at FSU, because you got time to heal up, or time to rest the legs if you need to. All right, so we think Simpson's probably not throwing for 250 plus.
Right.
I tend to agree. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Rushing wise, if you think Simpson under, you probably think Richard Young over 66.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I could see him breaking one, like a decent size carry, and then just having a handful mixed in of 3 or 4 here and there. They're going to want to run them, because that's just what the board tends to do outside of the years he had Penix.
Yeah, he's a more rushing focused guy, I think. Also, because you have uncertainty about the coverages FSU is going to be playing, with the new defense, new looks, everything, you're going to want to try to ease Ty Simpson into the game, I think. That doesn't mean like run, and then, hey, bail us out on 3rd and 8 by throwing the ball. But I'm saying I do think you'll see a commitment to the run game from Bama, because they've also talked about, like, they wanted to get tougher along the lines of scrimmage this year. And we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. We are, like 45 minutes into this? You want to go predictions?
Sure. Well, actually, what would you say are the 3 keys to the game for FSU to pull the upset?
Okay, so stuff that's within your control.
Yes.
Okay. Daryl Jackson has got to play like a top 2 round pick.
There you go.
If he does not, if Daryl just plays like he played like last year, FSU's going to get their ass kicked. Straight up. Because you don't have anybody else on the D-line who can make a difference in this game because that quality of opponent, in my opinion. And I think Daryl has that in him. I just don't know. I certainly don't trust him to go out there and do that because he has never shown that he will show up when you need him. But he might this year. That's far and away the number one. If you don't have that, like, if you just said, hey, Daryl's PFF grade was in the 60s, like, all right, you lost by 20. Probably. Okay. Castellanos being decisive but not trying to do too much when it comes to big plays.
Good.
You know, because like they're clearly going to let him have underneath stuff all he wants, I think, and try to limit the big stuff and just see if he can be consistent. Because he, you know, I know the stats have been that he's been like the least accurate deep ball quarterback in the country, but still, like Gus is going to want to try to create those deep shots off play action. Third key. You just have so few guys on this team I think are stars. Like I think you need Deuce to win multiple one-on-ones.
Yeah. I think he has to change the field a couple times with just by out jumping a Bama DB.
Right. Exactly. Like he has to play 6'8" because he's 6'6".
Yeah.
Who? What would be your three?
I'll keep it more high level. Just looking at the way Bama played last year, I've already mentioned I think they have to have some type of massive special teams play. But I would also say they got to win the turnover battle by +2. Last year, Bama lost the turnover battle by 2 or more 4 times, and they lost 3 of those games. And the game they didn't lose was USF. And I think a lot of people forget that game was 21-16 with about 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter before Ryan Williams took over and Jam Miller made a big run. So I think you got to win the turnover battle. And then they got to stay committed to the run game. They cannot let early failures on rundowns discourage them and force them into a passing game. Last year, Bama allowed 6 opponents to run the ball 40 or more times. 4 times they lost. USF was also one of those games. So again, they could have lost 5 of the 6 times where teams stay committed. Now, you anticipate high number of carries when a team does win the game because they're going to run the clock out. But as we said with Vanderbilt didn't have a ton of success running the ball traditionally, but they also didn't abandon it. And I think that's where FSU has to stay committed throughout the game. You got to try to stay on schedule, and you got to not allow Bama's defensive line and linebackers to pin their ears back and just come after Tommy. They have to at least account for the run game and think you're going to run it sometimes. So that would be my 3.
I think that turnover one is huge, and like to the extent you can control turnovers. I don't know that you necessarily can, but I mean it's still
when that ball's on the ground though, you got to find a way to pick it up, especially if there's bad weather. There could be some opportunities, and while it does take luck to recover fumbles, you got to the hustle has to be there. And sometimes that's all it takes is you just have to out hustle the other guy to get to the football when it's on the ground.
1,000,000%. And I do think you would anticipate playing Tony White style of defense. You may allow more yards than Adam Fuller's, but you will have more eyes on the football by way of playing more zone. So you might be able to have more guys going after the football when and if it is on the ground. Do you have a score?
I do. I think it'll be close for the first half. I could see something like 13-10 at halftime. I could see Bama being very conservative early in the game. FSU maybe hits a big play to get a touchdown. But I do think ultimately their depth is going to wear out FSU. I'm afraid Tommy's going to try to play a little too much hero ball. Could lead to a turnover or 2. And I got a final score of 34-17. I do think Bama will cover. I think it'll be competitive for 2, maybe even 3 quarters. But I just ultimately Bama's depth is going to wear on FSU, and I think they will lose by at least a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, I've been dancing around a lot of scores. 34-17 was certainly one that comes up like an awful lot in the model. I'll go 30-14. Just a little sloppier, little run focused. Maybe neither team executes in the red zone all that well. Some jitters. You need a lot to go right. and a lot can go right. I think it is possible. I don't think it's super probable. Regardless, like you need this team, as we mentioned 2 episodes ago, to recognize this is a 12-game season. It's not like this is not a make or break game for you. Like, do you need it? I think in a lot of ways, yeah. You at least need a good performance. You need the crowd to have a good time. You need the stadium operations to be smooth. Obviously, like they don't want that to look like an absolute cluster, which I'm hoping that it won't. I do like they painted the end zones garnet. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
I'd love to bring back the white ones because I grew up in the 90s with
the white uniform. The white end zones are amazing, dude. Yes. I did get I got a Florida State. Let me go grab this. This is kind of you like this.
All right.
I actually it's in the boys' room and they're sleeping right now. So, but I got a Florida State pennant, old school one, and my mom had it like cleaned and like got the creases out of it and got one of those nice pennant frames. So it's
that's awesome.
Yeah, like the white end zones reminded me. So it was awesome.
Very neat.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, look forward to doing the reaction and tomorrow night snap count draft as well as always. And I know Chuck has some really cool new graphics he's been working on for us on that. And this was fun. I regardless of this result, if this team stays together and they keep their head in the game, I do think they have a pretty nice shot to have a decent season, and a decent bounce back season. I don't know if they're ready to beat Bama. Hopefully they are.
I agree.
All right. Let's see, buddy.